Hi everyone, my name is Ramon Batista and I'm a candidate for the position of police chief for the city of Lincoln. I am honored to be here, honored to be a part of the finalist group. I want you to know that this is actually my second visit to the city of Lincoln and I've really enjoyed my stay. My wife and I have been here now for the last 48 hours and really enjoying it. Everybody's been really friendly and I'm looking forward to tonight and thank you for being here.
What brought you to Lincoln?
The opportunity, I think, to work in what I see is a very, very good police department. It's got great foundation. In addition to that, this community, I think, while not crime-free, and there isn't anything like that, I think is a very good community, a very safe community with, like I said, a solid foundation of a good police department. And I want to be a part of that. I think that the experiences that I've had as a major city chief fit well with what I've seen as the forward-thinking nature of this organization, and I want to be a part of that and help them get to the next level.
If you were to be named chief, what would be your #1 goal for the department?
My #1 goal, if I become chief, initially is going to be to make sure that I get to meet everyone. That is going to be probably the first thing I do is get into like a listening tour, getting to know everybody on the department and getting to know everyone in the community. And then from those conversations begin to figure out like what are the through lines, like what things the officers in the community feel are important, and then make that like part of the foundation for how we begin to move forward. But I don't have anything that like immediately I think, oh, I'm going to do this. It is to get to know everybody.
Can you talk us through your history in policing and maybe the different hats that you've worn through that career?
Sure. So you're looking at somebody who wanted to be a police officer since he was 10 years old. I am like the classic case of that. But as a kid, I didn't have an opportunity to figure out like, how am I going to be a police officer? So I've just dedicated my time as a child and bugging my mom to get me enrolled with like police cadets. And then from there, I finally when I was old enough, 22 years old, I joined the Tucson Police Department. And that's really where my 3 decades in policing started. I was a police officer for the first 10 years of my life as a line level officer, detective for a couple years, and then a sergeant for 6 years. The majority of my time as a sergeant, I was a traffic sergeant, a motor sergeant on a motorcycle. And then from there, I began like the ascension into lieutenant, captain, and so on. In preparation to one day become a chief, as an assistant chief, I started to attend like every available executive level training and leadership course for aspiring police chiefs. And so by the time I did become a chief, I had attended, the FBI National Academy, the Senior Management Institute of Police, the Major City Chiefs Organization's Police Executive Leadership Institute. And so that was the travails of rising to the ranks of assistant chief. And then at about the 31-year mark is when I had the opportunity to become the chief for the city of Mesa for roughly 2.5 years. And then I retired in 2019. I guess I should keep going. I retired in 2019 and waited about 6 months where I got a lot of things done that I needed to get done at home. The first thing that happens, the death of George Floyd in late May, early June, and then the subsequent protests that happened afterwards, and the way that police officers across the country were painted with a broad brush about, what the country felt like they thought they were seeing in our police, really tore at me because I know that our officers are good people. And it was that experience, right, of the difficulty of watching George Floyd die at the hands of an officer, and that was obviously wrong. And then in turn realizing that that's not all officers, and so watching the officers have to suffer through the protests that occurred and the way that those things unfolded really weighed heavy on me. And I really asked myself whether or not I had done everything I could in order to prevent that while I was a police chief or as an assistant chief. And it prompted me to write a book about it. And there was a lot of hesitancy with that because I didn't want to write a book where I also have to like talk about myself, because that's not really my nature. But this topic and this issue was so pressing to me, especially when we were in the midst of the pandemic, that I went forward with the project along with my friend, my co-author, talking about my experiences and the ways that I believe that you can affect culture change in a police organization in a way that's transformative and not punitive, in a way that engages the officers and the community in order to find our better footing and find a better path towards outcomes in our communities that are safe. And so that's kind of what I did during the pandemic, and this opportunity to apply to be the Lincoln chief presented itself, and I see where my skill sets and the alignment of this organization in this city fit, and so I want to be a part of that.
What's your stance on body-worn cameras for police officers, and if they capture something in an incident, how soon would you release that to the media and the public to maybe dispel rumors or to possibly quell protests?
So I have experience in dealing with critical incidents, right, that unfold where the event is recorded on camera, on a body-worn camera. And what I learned from that incident was that it was important for me to bring the family of the individual that we had shot, bring them into the station, bring the family, the NAACP was with them, brought them in and showed them the video and gave them context, gave them explanation so that they understood how this had happened. And we showed it to them at full speed, and then we slowed it down and tried to give it more meaning from the officer's perspective as to what he saw and what he was experiencing and what led him to use force. And I think that was important in that event did not become a national story. And that we were successful in maintaining that relationship with the community and being transparent, while at the same time, obviously allowing for the process and the due process of this case to go forward, because the case still had to be reviewed by the county attorney and so on. But I did feel it was important to show the video to the family. I didn't show the video to the community at large. I showed it to the family, and we had no protests at our station. We had no issues that unfolded from that incident. And I think that's our goal, right? That's positive. So yeah, I think, does that cover it?
Yeah, I mean, kind of. The biggest thing is, so I'll give you a hypothetical that actually happened back in my hometown of Lancaster, Pennsylvania. An officer responded to somebody in distress. Well, the family member was in distress. Their son was mentally deranged and whatnot. The officer came to the house. The guy came at him with a knife. The officer ran away, fired, ended up killing the guy. There became large protests that happened in the city because it just happened after George Floyd, officer involved shooting a black guy. And nobody really knew what happened. So the district attorney took that body-worn camera and obviously talked with the police department, police chief, and released it to the media and the public a few hours later to show them that the guy had a steak knife in his hand that was running with the officer, and that's why he fired his weapon. So in an instance like that, would you use body-worn cameras to quell public disinformation?
Yeah. Look, I just had a similar conversation with some folks related to this topic, and I'll tell you that I think that it is important for us in police, and especially in today's light, that we should be transparent about these things. And so if, for example, the county attorney says, you can't release the actual weapon or you can't show the video, I think there's opportunities for us to then show a facsimile of the weapon or the knife in order for the public to have more ease and understanding as to what kind of threat the officer was experiencing. And again, I think that it's important for us as leaders in policing to be upfront, right? And to lead this conversation so that there's context and understanding as to what the officers are facing. Because I guarantee you that our officers don't get up in the morning with the intent of being in a gunfight. You know, that's not what they're thinking. And so, you know, when an officer gets a 911 call, and we often think about, well, you know, why couldn't you dispatch a mental health care worker to that? Well, because oftentimes the calls that we get are ambiguous. Like, we don't know what we're going to until we get there and it begins to unfold. We could go to a traffic accident, and one of those parties is not doing well. And you know, the effects of whatever they're feeling at the moment can begin to unfold and unwind right as the officer's arriving. And that didn't come out as a person in crisis that needed help, and we needed to bring a clinician to help us. I mean, that happened like right on the spot. And so that's why I say that this stuff can happen really quickly. And we have to be able to give that context and that understanding so that when the public hears this stuff, then they have a better feeling of like how this happened. So if there's an opportunity to release the video, if the county attorney wouldn't block it and it wouldn't harm the investigation, then yes, I would be in favor of releasing the video. Just like I talked about earlier, right? Making sure that I talk to the family first, show them the video, and then if we feel as though we need to go to the public and because it's getting to the point that we need to, then yes, I would certainly approach it that way, because I don't ever believe that bad news gets better with age, if there's any bad news. So I think the quicker we can get to whatever the issue is and move on, then the better.
Real quick, you just kind of touched on one.
You're bogarting everybody's time.
You just touched on mental health and mental health crisis, and that's a bit of my question for everyone.
Okay.
You talked about not sending out crisis management people right away necessarily without knowing more, because the calls are ambiguous. Would you be in favor of sending them out with officers right
Yeah.
in the
Yes.
right away?
So, but there again, right? We don't know when we're going to be dealing with a person that's emotionally disturbed until we get there. I mean, sometimes we get a hint because the call comes out a particular way, suicidal person, et cetera. And so, yes, I am a huge proponent, and I have experience with a co-responder model to address the issues of mental illness. Homelessness is another one that I think that we can make a lot of inroads. I don't know that with respect to homelessness, that a police officer is always the best response protocol to something like that. There are folks in social service and justice agencies that are experts in that field, folks that have been in those people's shoes, homeless navigators that can do much better at helping somebody in that situation than a police officer.
I know that a lot has changed, obviously, in these past year or two in terms of conversations about police, but what do you think is one of the biggest lessons you learned in your time as a police chief prior at Mesa that you'd like to bring to this position if selected?
Wow. You know, I talked about all the work that I did leading up to being a police chief, and I'll tell you that my experience from being a chief is that you don't know what that position entails and what it's like. You know, Lincoln is a city of almost 300,000 people. It is definitely a mid-city police department, which is right below a major city. And now that I've spent time as a police chief, now going into it, I am more eyes wide open of understanding the commitment and the time that takes. So once somebody agrees to be the police chief, I mean, you're it. And there is no time where you're going to be able to say, oh, well, I'm going to turn it off now because it's my day off. And that is a whole new level of understanding that I didn't have as an assistant chief, but certainly learned through, through the times that I won and the times that I learned as being a police chief. And so I guess what I bring to the table is that experience of understanding the full responsibilities and ramifications of being a police chief, and that's my strength.
How visible do you think a police chief should be in the community? I mean, you talked about you've done it before, but I guess what role should they play and how visible should they be to the public?
I think that the police chiefs should be very visible. It is the police chief's role to go out and build goodwill and relationships in the community, because at the end of the day, we're human beings, and we're working in an environment that is completely unpredictable. And there are going to be moments when, even with the best police department, mistakes are going to be made. And in those times when a mistake is made, it's going to require the trust of the community to be able to look at the chief and say, okay, they made a mistake, you know, they could have handled that better. The chief is talking about it. I trust him. I've known him. I've talked to him, that whatever the issue is, they'll figure it out, they'll fix it, and we'll be able to move on. So it is vitally important, right, for the chief to be out in the community, establishing those relationships and building that foundation of trust that, that our officers are doing at the same time that I am, only from a different perspective, a working perspective. So yeah, without a doubt, I think that it's important for the chief to be visible, to be out there, and to use all of our modern tools to communicate with the public. So if you ever want to see what I'm interested in, just look at my Twitter account, and you'll see what my beliefs are and the things that I espouse. So that's what you would get from me as the chief of Lincoln, and you know, some of the lessons learned, I guess. So thanks.